The story begins in a beautiful city surrounded by mountains and forests. On the other side, we see a man working with his hammer. In the next moment, we show that he finishes building his beautiful home in the countryside. His eyes well up with tears as he exclaims that he finally has his own restaurant. His name is Ellison, and he is a Class 9 Archmage. Reflecting on the past, he thinks it's been 15 years since he was heading home from school as usual. After finishing school, feeling really sleepy, he had only one dream: to become a chef. He mentions that he practiced handling ingredients a little bit today, and it's already getting dark. Ellison attended a high school that had a culinary arts department, and it was his dream to become a famous chef after graduation, eventually opening a small restaurant when he got older. However, his life took an unexpected turn when he was hit by Truck-Kun. When he came to his senses, he was greeted with the scenery of an unfamiliar world, commonly referred to as being sent into a fantasy world. But this world is far from peaceful. Suddenly, a man comes and tells him to get himself together, warning that if he messes up during evacuation, he'll die on the road. Confused, without another thought, Ellison starts traveling with that man. He asks the old man about the place and where they are. After hearing Ellison's words, the old man is surprised and asks if he's an outsider, noting that his outfit is a little unique. The old man then explains that they are in the city of Drake, located on the outskirts of the Rurin Empire. Suddenly, red dragons start attacking, and the old man didn't expect this to happen even in a remote area like this. Hearing the old man's words, Ellison gets a rough idea that the world he was summoned to is filled with monsters, magic, and an empire seemingly at war with dragons. He thinks about what kind of ridiculous situation this is, finding everything incredibly confusing. However, it is said that humans are animals that can adapt, so he tries to accept the current situation as quickly as possible. Ellison thought, let's think positively. I almost died after being hit by a truck, but luckily I got a second chance. There's no way this world is that bad. I don't have to take the college entrance exam, and I don't even have to go to the military after graduating from college. While contemplating this, thinking about not having to go to the military and looking for his own strengths, suddenly a man riding a horse arrives and asks everyone to pay attention. He says that he received a message from His Majesty the Emperor. Reading the message, he announces to the people of the Rurin Empire that the fate of the country is at stake. The mercenaries have fled, and the knights are falling. There's no place left to run away from those dragons. Now they must stand up for their country themselves. After hearing his words, the atmosphere changes, and people start expressing their determination to protect their country. Ellison is really confused, and the old man screams loudly, saying, "Our emperor commands. Let us fight, in the name of the knights, for Rurin." The day Ellison was summoned, the Rurin Empire was facing a great crisis due to the war against the dragons, as the military power provided by mercenaries was not enough. The enlistment system was implemented, drafting all men between the ages of 17 and 45 into the Templar Knights, regardless of status. In the next moment, an old man asks Ellison if he has any relatives who are high-ranking knights or high-ranking officials of the Templar Knights. Since Ellison doesn't know anyone in this new world, he ends up enlisting too. He reflects on the transfer to this new world where danger is everywhere, expressing a preference for getting hit by the truck instead. And that's how his service as a knight begins. A few days later, one of the knights approaches Ellison and mentions that his magic potential is quite high. When he leaves the training center, he'll be assigned to the Magic Corps. Ellison agrees with the knight's suggestion. During lunchtime, as Ellison eats his food, he contemplates being an archmage, thinking it might be better than wielding a sword and bumping into others. However, he finds the taste of his food unpleasant, comparing it to eating boiled potatoes with cardboard. Soldiers sitting nearby express that the food is good, but Ellison can't understand why they consider it so. He wonders if people here lack taste buds. Suddenly, he realizes that if he opened a restaurant in this world, it could be a big hit. Inspired, he starts training hard to achieve his dream, believing he can still fulfill it in this new place. He thinks a dragon is just a beast, and he'll train his magic to achieve that, expecting to be discharged in about 2 years. However, he regrets not knowing that his service period wouldn't be 2 or 3 years, but rather 15 years, realizing he might not have endured it if he had known earlier. Time passed, and in the present, we see Drake City where Ellison has opened his restaurant. A beautiful lady, the landlady, passes by the restaurant. The landlady is surprised, not expecting to find a store in such a place. She notices Ellison, who is crying while reminiscing about his past. Misinterpreting his tears, she believes he's going through a rough time, unaware that it's related to his 15 years of military service. Concerned, the landlady asks if Ellison is okay. He reassures her, expressing happiness about finally managing to open his restaurant. The landlady is surprised and asks if he is the owner. After a brief conversation, they introduce themselves. The landlady introduces herself as Rain. However, for simplicity, we'll continue to refer to her as the landlady. After the introduction, she asks Ellison if he recently moved there, as she hasn't seen him before. Ellison confirms that he is new to the area and came with a friend from the military who tends to sleep a lot, expecting her to wake up in the evening. Curious, the landlady inquires if Ellison needs meat for his restaurant. He explains that after finishing his work, he planned to find out if there was a butcher's shop in town. The landlady mentions that it's great timing and informs Ellison that her husband runs a butcher shop. She directs him to Null's butcher shop, located to the left of the alley at the entrance to the village. Ellison expresses his gratitude and says he'll go there right away. However, the landlady hesitates, warning Ellison that her husband has a fiery personality and can be harsh. She suggests that if he finds him too strict, he can mention that she sent him. Ellison appreciates the landlady's kindness and agrees to follow her advice. As he heads to the butcher shop, he wonders just how fiery her husband could be. Upon arriving at the butcher shop, Ellison encounters a seemingly scary old man. The old man angrily asks what Ellison wants and declares that he won't sell him any meat. Ellison, frightened but determined, explains that he is the owner of a restaurant and wishes to purchase meat. The old man refuses, expressing frustration about previous restaurant owners taking advantage of him. Suddenly, someone intervenes and hits the old man, calling his words nonsense. It turns out to be the landlady, who had met Ellison in front of his restaurant and came to check on him. She asked the old man why she came here because she was anxious. She apologized to Ellison and said once his husband gets upset, it lasts for a long time. She asked Ellison if he wanted Balearan meat. The old man is crying from pain, telling the landlady he can't believe she is doing this, and asking if she knows how hard it was for him. However, the landlady says, why is he taking it out on Ellison? On the other side, Ellison is really frustrated, thinking that he wants to go home. The landlady asks her husband to hurry up and get the meat, then gives it to Ellison. She apologizes once again to Ellison and mentions that it was a restaurant her husband took good care of because the owner was his colleague when he was a mercenary. Although she thinks he was greatly shocked when betrayed like that, Ellison says he understands. More curious about his husband's past as a mercenary, the landlady comments on how young Ellison looks and asks where he was drafted. Ellison replies that he had a lot of troubles and went through many bad things over the past 15 years. In the next moment, the old man gets the meat and asks Ellison why he doesn't show off his great skills. He also questions if Ellison thinks he'll give him precious Balearan meat, emphasizing that Balearan meat is delicious no matter how Ellison eats it. However, the old man declares that from now on, he'll only supply meat to restaurants that he approves of. Ellison doesn't pay any attention to the old man's words. After seeing Balearan meat, he didn't expect to receive this meat instead of Balearan. The old man then asks Ellison to try making a proper dish using that meat. If he doesn't satisfy him, he won't be able to see even a single piece of fat, let alone meat, from now on. The old man also reminded Ellison that his taste is quite exquisite, so brace yourself. It's best if he prepares well. However, Ellison is not paying any attention to him. The old man asks him if he is listening or if he's starting to feel scared now. On the other side, Ellison sees that the old man is lying on the table after his wife hit him with a cooking pan. Ellison asks the landlady, wasn't that a bit too harsh? But the landlady replies that he doesn't have to worry. Her husband is a tough nut. She also tells Ellison that he can ignore what his husband just said, as she didn't expect him to play tricks to this extent. Ellison replies that he will be grateful to cook for them. He invites them to join him and Mr. Knoll for dinner at his restaurant in the evening, assuring them that he'll have their food ready. The landlady is really surprised. She asks Ellison if it's okay to use that meat and offers some Balearan meat. However, Ellison refuses, stating that this is enough and he's sure he can make something delicious out of this meat. He says he'll see them in the evening. But the landlady is really nervous because the meat they gave Ellison is not Balearan. It's the belly fat of a wooba. Ellison, knowing that in this world, livestock and animals are called by entirely different names compared to where he came from, explains that cows are referred to as wuka, chickens as Palin Q, wolves as Balearan, and pigs as wooba. After some time, Ellison arrives at his restaurant without any thought. He opens the meat bag and thinks they'll be arriving soon, so he starts preparing. After seeing the pork belly, he thinks that he can understand Mr. Knoll's pride. It's top-notch meat. In this world, Palin Q, unlike chicken, is considered a pricey ingredient, and the most cost-effective meat option is wooba or pork. with the belly cut being especially budget-friendly. Ellison also mentions that people here just don't appreciate the charm of this cut. Given the quality of this pork belly, the natural way to enjoy it is to grill it with his fire magic. After some time, the landlady and her husband come to Ellison's restaurant. The landlady asks her husband why he said that, but he asks what he did. The landlady replies, "Didn't you say that you would only supply meat to approved restaurants?" She also questions when he came up with such a fancy principle, noting that Ellison seems honest and kind, so why can't he just be nice to the new resident? But the old man replies to him that she just met him today. How could she possibly know? He is a good person. However, the landlady says to the old man that rather than him being deceived with both eyes open, doesn't he think other people's eyes are more accurate? And he doesn't even mean it. Checking his cooking skills was just an excuse. What he wants to see is his sense of responsibility, right? After hearing his wife's words, he gets silent. At some points, he knows what his wife is saying is right, but he changes the topic and says he has a really picky palate. He knows. What if his cooking skills aren't up to par? After hearing this, the landlady asks if his cooking skills are not good, what is he going to do? At this, the old man replies that if he asks for a pound, they'll only give him a pound. After saying that, they start heading to Ellison's restaurant. In the next moment, we see some soldiers fighting with monsters. They're saying that there are too many monsters. They can't defeat them, they have to retreat. But one of the soldiers' legs is stuck in rocks. He's asking for help. Suddenly, a monster comes from behind him, going to attack him. But suddenly a man comes from nowhere and starts casting a magic spell, Thermal Blade. With this, he kills every monster in just one move. After seeing this, the soldiers get really surprised. They start cheering. The great archmage Sir Ellison is here. Ellison is really famous for serving in the military. In the present, he starts casting a mini thermal blade on his finger, thinking that every magic has its own way of being used. He is using this magic to create cuts in the meat, enhancing the absorption of the marinade. Moreover, as it bakes, the moisture on the surface of the meat quickly evaporates, allowing you to enjoy an even crispier texture. After that, he cleans his hands with a towel and thinks the meat is ready. He just has to prepare dishes. In the next moment, the landlady and her husband come to the restaurant. Ellison greets them and asks to sit wherever they like. He'll bring their food shortly. The landlady praises Ellison's restaurant, saying it's a really good place, but the old man is not happy. He says he doesn't like this place. After hearing this, the landlady gets angry, grabs a pan, and says to his husband, "How about we stop being grumpy and just wait for the food?" On the other side, our main character Ellison starts cooking. He says that once the griddle is heated, lightly coat it with oil. Since pork belly is quite fatty, apply just enough to prevent it from sticking to the pan. When placing the meat, begin with the skin side. Otherwise, as the insides start cooking, the skin may dry out, making it difficult to achieve even grilling. But he thought it would have been better with more time for the moisture to evaporate because delicious cooking even enhances the appetite through its sound. The sound of sizzling pork is just like that. Fry the skin, then adjust the heat to give the sides some color. After an additional sprinkle of salt, grill the meat thoroughly to ensure even cooking inside. Then cut it into a convenient size for serving. Next, we prepare a salad to accompany the meal, perhaps eating just the wraps as they may not be familiar to the locals here. Various vegetables and a tangy dressing to balance out the richness of the grilled pork belly. After preparing the vegetable salad, he thought that Mr. Knoll seems meticulous, so it's best to avoid unnecessary additions. Finally, he plates it nicely for the finishing touch. The salad and grilled pork belly complete. After that, he starts serving them. After seeing the food, the landlady praises Ellison, saying, "This looks delicious." But the old man says only the appearance is good, but the taste is going to be really bad. However, the landlady doesn't pay any attention to her husband's words and starts eating. She takes the first bite and feels like she is in heaven. The food is really good. She asks Ellison, "Is this really wooba belly fat?" Ellison, with a big smile, replies that she is right. The landlady talks about the food, saying, "It's delightfully crispy on the outside, yet brimming with juiciness inside." The zesty fragrance of the salad also cleanses away its richness. She never imagined such a combination. Ellison smiles and says to the landlady that he is really glad that she likes it. After eating, the landlady says to Ellison, "It seems I'll have to supply the meat to ensure I get a taste of your cooking again." Ellison says thanks for the compliment and asks the old man how about him, was the food to your liking? But the other old man has already finished eating. Ellison is really surprised. He thought that the old man didn't like it. On the other hand, the old man is really disappointed because the food is really delightful. and this is not enough for him. Ellison asks him if it satisfied him, but the old man is not satisfied. He asks Ellison to bring him more meat. He needs more meat. But his wife hits him with a pan and says if he wants more, just ask for it and not scare Ellison. After that, the old man says to Ellison that he has passed. To be honest, among all the wooba dishes he's tried so far, this was the best. The contract is sealed. Just say what kind of meat he wants. He'll supply the finest meat from the Rurin Empire. After hearing this, Ellison is really happy. The landlady is also surprised that her husband admits that Ellison's food is really delicious. After that, they sign a contract, and Ellison found a good butcher shop. After a long day, Ellison thinks this is enough to consider the first day of business a success. On the other side, we see a girl who is sleeping on the bed. She woke up after smelling something delicious. In the early evening, in the suburb of Great City, Ellison has been adapting smoothly since the opening of the restaurant a week ago. People are loving Ellison's wooba belly meat, and he is really happy to see many customers. After some time later, people finish their meal. They say thanks to Ellison for serving them a really delicious meal. Ellison appreciates them and says, "Come again." After closing his restaurant, Ellison says, "Should I slowly start finishing up now?" After that, Ellison heads to the kitchen. He shows that there aren't many condiments and spices left, and he has to get some. Everyone should know how important these are for cooking. He picks up a pepper glass bottle and shows there isn't much left, so he has to get some. However, in this world, they are rare and expensive, so he can't use them freely. Moreover, the quality and variety of the products are no match against the products in the modern world. So, he gets a gold coin from his bag and says, it's time to restock. He places the gold coin in a magic circle on the table and starts casting a magic spell. The way to solve this problem in one go is this world's summoning magic, which summons objects from the modern world. Truth be told, he coincidentally made this spell when he was searching for a way to return to his original world. But he said it before, magic depends on how one uses it. There is a limit to the object's size and weight, but it's still a big help to him. But he also thought that it's not a perfect spell since it failed to achieve the main purpose of returning to his original world. He also thought it would be nice if he could go over just like this red pepper box. But he feels bad about just taking the products, so he at least sent the gold coin over. But groceries, unless they are processed products like fresh meat, eggs, or vegetables, all arrive in a spoiled state. But processed products also have expiration dates, but it doesn't seem to be a problem. And he doesn't know the exact reason for this, why only processed products come out in a spoiled state. But there are also some side effects of using this magic because after using this magic once, he gets really tired. After using it so many times, he still can't get used to this. Even he, carrying the title of Archmage, can only perform the summoning magic once a day. Sometimes later, after finishing his work, he thought this is the perfect time to rest while drinking the beer he summoned last time. But when he opens the fridge door, he shows there isn't a single beer left in the fridge. He gets really angry. He shouts very loudly and asks Rurin, the girl we saw before. She is sleeping after drinking so many beers. Ellison goes to the second floor and hits him really hard on the head. She asks Ellison why did he hit him. She didn't do anything wrong. Ellison explains that she took the beer out of the refrigerator and drank all of it without asking. But he is more angry when she, after drinking the beer, doesn't clean his room. Rurin says she does this because he doesn't leave any of the delicious food for him last time. She's talking about when Ellison invited the landlady for dinner. She also adds that his body is a dragon's. Cleaning up is something lower beings do. He is not cleaning it up. For those who don't get it, his name is Rurin, and she is a black dragon. Ellison is really angry. He hits Rurin again, and he gives him some organize and asks him to peel all of them. But Rurin doesn't want to do this. She says that she is a dragon. This work doesn't suit him. Just like she said, she really is a dragon, though she's polymorphed into her human form right now. Ellison found her after she became an orphan, losing her mother and home during the Dragon War. Ellison is a soft-hearted person, and he couldn't just leave her like that. So he decided to help him, and they have been staying together ever since. Ellison thought about Rurin that, although she has lived for hundreds of years, she is still young for a dragon. Maybe that's why she is immature. Rurin is peeling organize after Ellison hit him. She is crying because of this. To make him happy, Ellison says he will make him hamburger steak for dinner if she finishes peeling and for him to stop whining his hands. After hearing about the hamburger steak, Rurin gets really happy. In the next moment, an old man comes to Ellison's restaurant. He is really sad and asks Ellison to bring him alcohol and some snacks. After seeing him, Ellison says, "So, old man, so it was you, Mr. Noel." He asks him to wait for a while. Ellison goes to the kitchen and opens the fridge, showing that Rurin drank all of the beer. So, he decides to give him another drink. Luckily, he summoned another drink last time. He gives this drink to the old man with some snacks. After seeing this drink, the old man asks Ellison, "What is this? It's not beer, is it water?" Ellison explains that this is a new drink, not water. It's called Saju. Why don't you try it since you're curious? The old man gets the drink, and before he drinks, he says it smells a bit weird. But after drinking one cup, he says this isn't bad at all. It's bitter at first, but the sweet taste at the end harmonizes well with the meat. He also says that the side dish turned into something amazing with the Saju alone. It has a different charm than the salad. The old man also adds that he knew it before, but Ellison's cooking is really extraordinary. He asks Ellison to bring him another bottle. Ellison goes to the kitchen to get another bottle, but he thinks that the old man seems different today. Did something happen to him? One after another, the old man drinks many bottles of Saju, but he doesn't stop there. He asks Ellison to bring him one more bottle. However, Ellison replies to the old man that he has already drunk too much. This drink has a high alcohol percentage, but the old man doesn't care. He asks Ellison to bring him another bottle. He has to get drunk today. Seeing the old man like that, Ellison asks what happened to him. The old man replies that he thinks his wife, Rurin, is cheating on him. After hearing this, Ellison is surprised. The old man explains that, in the beginning, she said she needed to go out for a bit, but it has happened several times now. Every month at a certain time, she dresses up nicely. This continued for several months, so he decided to secretly follow her one day. And then he found out she was meeting a colleague from her mercenary days. He had been his closest friend. The reason why he disappeared after he opened the butcher shop must be that he was too ashamed to face me while hanging out with Rurin. And today, she went out again, though it's not the usual time of the month. The old man is really angry. He says it seems like she doesn't care about him at all now. After hearing this, Ellison asks the old man to calm down, stating that getting drunk won't solve the problem. But the old man is really sad. He says he won't be able to face the truth, but he still loves wife Rurin. He says even though the situation is like this, he can't live without Rurin and asks Ellison what he's supposed to do now. After hearing the old man's story, Ellison asks the old man to leave this case to him. He hasn't known landlady Rurin that long, but he doesn't think she is the kind of person who would do something like that. He asks the old man to wait here and asks Rurin to stop peeling and come out with him. There is some work to do. After hearing this, Rurin replies that she doesn't want to go. Ellison says if she doesn't want, she can just keep peeling. After hearing that, Rurin agrees with him. Sometimes later, they reach the marketplace, and they start finding where landlady will be. Rurin says these restaurants are really crowded, unlike anywhere else. After some time, Ellison finds out landlady. She is sitting in the restaurant with someone. After seeing the man who is sitting with landlady, Ellison wonders if he is the mercenary colleague Mr. Knoll was talking about. Ellison asked Rurin to see the man and the woman over there. He told her to listen to their conversation and find out what they are talking about. However, Rurin asked Ellison to promise that he would give her a hamburger steak if she did this. She also mentioned that she didn't want to prepare the ingredients anymore. Ellison promised to do this, activated his skill, and started listening. The landlady said to the old man, "Don't you think it's time to tell my husband?" She mentioned that her husband is becoming more suspicious of their relationship and is sad because Ellison hasn't visited the butcher shop. Mr. Ment responded, telling the landlady that she knows her husband's personality. If he figures out that Mr. Ment helped him, he will be the one to avoid. After hearing this, Ellison asked Rurin if that's what the guy called Ment just said. Rurin confirmed, saying yes, and she is sure about what she just heard. Ellison thought it didn't seem like an affair, no matter how he looked at it. So he said, "All right, I don't need to know more," and jumped from the ceiling. Rurin asked where he was going, and Ellison told her to wait back at home. In the next moment, he went into the restaurant and asked the landlady and Mr. Ment if he could join them. He also mentioned that, just like they said, Mr. Knoll is greatly misunderstanding the two of them. The landlady and Mr. Ment were really surprised after seeing Ellison. Some time later, in Ellison's restaurant, the old man got really drunk thinking about his wife. Suddenly, the restaurant door opened, and the old man saw his wife and Mr. Ment. Mr. Ment asked the old man if it's been a long time since they've seen each other. The old man replied, "That's right. Seeing you two together looks quite nice." The landlady explained that he is misunderstanding, but the old man got really angry, asking what does it mean it's not like that. He expressed disappointment in Mr. Ment, stating that he trusted him. The old man prepared to punch Mr. Ment, but a magic barrier created by Ellison stopped him. Ellison asked Mr. Ment to resolve the misunderstanding and questioned why he would let the old man hit him, stating that the problem won't be resolved like that. Ellison suggested that Mr. Knoll would calm down if Mr. Ment told him that he lent him the money when he opened the butcher shop. After hearing this, the old man asked what did he say, but Ellison told them all to sit down at a table and talk it out. Ellison went to the kitchen to prepare food, mentioning that Mr. Knoll spent the whole day drinking, so he'll make a dish with soup to calm his insides. He decided on a shabu with Bulurin meat that Miss Landlady gave him. Once he prepared several sauces with soy sauce as a base for the meat, prepared the soup, and filtered the anchovies and MSG, the shabu-shabu dish was completed. After preparing the dish, Ellison hoped that they would resolve the misunderstanding. On the other side, the old man asked his wife if what Ellison said earlier is real, questioning if Mr. Ment really lent them the funds for the store. The landlady explained that it's just like he said. When he had no money left after being scammed, Mr. Ment lent them most of his life savings as the store's funds. Now that their store has a steady income, she was meeting him every month to repay him. That's all. But the old man didn't believe him. He insisted the money definitely came from a lord's castle, returning the funds after catching the scammer. He asked, "So you're saying that was a lie?" Mr. Ment replied, asking if he would have taken the money if he had told him the truth. He apologized for not being there to congratulate him when he first opened the store. He had no choice as it would have looked like he deceived him if the truth ever came out. Still, he never guessed that the old man was having such a hard time, and it seemed like he did something unnecessary. The old man wondered if Mr. Ment had plans after retiring from his mercenary life, questioning how he could give the money without thinking about himself. Ellison interrupted them, saying the food is ready, apologizing for the interruption, and suggesting it's better to talk while eating. Mr. Ment asked Ellison about the thin meat, and Ellison explained it's Bulurin meat from Mr. Knoll's butcher shop. He cut them thin for the dish where you cook the meat in the soup and eat it directly. Ellison asked them to try it. When Mr. Ment got a taste, he became really happy, and Mr. Ment recommended the old man try this as well. When the old man tried that, he also got really surprised. Mr. Ment said to the old man, "Do you remember the Perun battle? That day, I got stabbed with a sword to protect you." Mr. Ment said he still remembered that day vividly. They were out of supplies and food because the battle lasted longer than expected, and the only thing to eat was bland, watery soup. Then, Mr. Ment caught a wild Bulurin. Though he collapsed right next to him, having caught just one, the meat soup made out of the caught Bulurin was bland, and the meat in the soup was tough and pungent. It was better than anything else. The old man was really happy. His whole body was shaking after remembering that moment. Mr. Ment said to the old man, "You asked me earlier why I helped you despite my plans after retirement because I didn't have plans. I didn't have a plan more important than helping the old man." After hearing these words, the old man started crying, asked for forgiveness, and they cleared up every misunderstanding, enjoying their food. Sometimes later, Rurin said to Ellison, "A promise to a dragon is absolute. But it doesn't seem like that for him." She was thinking about hamburger steaks. Ellison promised him to make hamburger steaks. Ellison replied, "It's still evening. I'll make you the hamburger steaks right away." But Rurin was really angry, saying, "It's already night. How can he treat him like this when she was just requesting that she do as part of an appropriate contract?" On the other side, Mr. Ment called Ellison. Ellison replied, "I hope you enjoyed your meal." Mr. Ment replied, "Yes, and it was really amazing." But he came here because he wanted to ask Ellison something. Ellison asked what Mr. Ment wanted. Mr. Ment said the mercenary group received a mission to escort a quite high-priority person recently, and they wanted to host a dinner before departure to celebrate this. That's why, if it's fine with Ellison, he would like the dinner of the night before departure to be held in Ellison's restaurant, and asked if it would be possible. Ellison is really surprised. He never thought of hosting a group dinner for the mercenary group. The next day, Ellison visits the old man's shop, asking for some Palin Q meat. The old man explains that Palin Q meat is exceptionally rare, and if they were selling it, they would already be swimming in money. Realizing the rarity, Ellison gets really sad, reminding the old man that he promised any meat he wanted. Mr. Knoll questions where Ellison's confidence went, but then recalls hearing that Palin Q recently appeared in the lemon forest. He suggests Ellison go there to catch some. In Lemon Forest, Ellison discovers that Palin Q, though similar to chickens, behaves differently in this world. They periodically change their habitat, making them hard to find, and their swiftness makes them challenging to catch. Palin Q meat is precious with high demand. Despite numerous attempts, Ellison fails to catch a single Palin Q. Frustrated, he contemplates burning down the forests. Later, he regrets the decision to include Palin Q meat on the mercenary group's dinner menu. After some more tries, Ellison gives up and asks Rurin to try catching a Palin Q. Rurin agrees with a condition. Ellison will be in charge of washing the dishes for a while. Ellison agrees, and Rurin uses her Dragon Fear skill, causing all Palin Q to go unconscious. After catching them, Rurin asks Ellison how it was, emphasizing its scariness. She adds that if Ellison hadn't eaten a dragon's heart, he would have ended up like the Palin Q. Ellison replies that he already ate a dragon's heart, finding it quite convenient. He asks Rurin to use her skill on 15 more Palinkias. They later catch enough Palinkias and return to the restaurant. Rurin gets beer and drinks it, expressing that a beer after finishing work is the best. Ellison teases her, saying she just glared at them and didn't do any hard work. Rurin, not happy, explains how tiring it is to use her skill even though her eyes sting. Ellison understands and advises her not to drink too much, leaving some for the customers in the evening because today's dish goes well with beer. In the evening, Mr. Ment and his mercenary friends come to Ellison's restaurant. One of them questions if this is the place Ment talked about and expresses doubt about Ment's taste buds. Mr. Ment responds, expressing disappointment in their lack of faith in him. One of them, Miltine, expresses trust in Mr. Ment and believes the food will be delicious. Another mercenary, however, admits he would happily eat grass if Mr. Ment told him to. Mr. Ment interrupts, suggesting they talk about it once the food arrives. When Ellison brings out the food, Mr. Ment apologizes, and their conversation becomes a bit loud. Ellison comments that a celebration dinner can't be quiet. Mr. Ment introduces his treasured junior colleague, Miltine, to Ellison, mentioning how much senior colleagues have praised the restaurant. Miltine expresses his anticipation and admiration. Ellison hopes the food will meet their expectations and asks if they are ready. As he serves the dish, the mercenaries are surprised to learn it's fried Palinkias, a legendary monster that even expert hunters can't catch. Ellison downplays its legendary status and encourages them to try it before it gets cold. After just one bite, the mercenaries are shocked, proclaiming the food is incredibly delicious. They express that they've never had such tasty food in their entire lives. Mr. Ment proudly states he told everyone this was an amazing place. As they enjoy the meal, Ellison decides to attend to other tables, impressed by their reaction. Facing a surge in guests, Ellison returns to the kitchen and asks Rurin for help with serving. However, Rurin, reluctant to serve humans, reminds Ellison of her dragon-catching prowess. Ellison recalls their plan to open a restaurant after the war and expresses disappointment in the change of heart. Despite this, he offers Rurin the option to go back. Upon hearing this, Rurin changes her mind, intrigued by the idea of serving as a new experience for a dragon. Ellison tasks her with bringing the beer. After a challenging but successful service, they finally close the restaurant. Acknowledging Rurin's efforts, Ellison praises her and offers to share his portion. They enjoy the meal with beer, and Rurin expresses her happiness, declaring the food delicious. Ellison, surprised by Rurin's willingness to clean up, teases her about growing up. Rurin, however, explains that it's their restaurant, and she does it for that reason. They share a moment of happiness. In a playful manner, Ellison asks if they can cancel the bet about washing dishes for a month from the Palin Q hunt. Suddenly, a visitor arrives at Ellison's restaurant, and Rurin becomes visibly scared. Ellison inquires about her reaction, but the newcomer comments on the unpleasant nature of visiting a human city, leaving the situation hanging. After seeing him, Ellison says, "It's been a while." He is Black Dragon Elder Metadonna. Metadonna tells Ellison that it's not a name a mere human can utter. Ellison ignores his words and asks why he came here. "You're getting by well living in such a small place," the Black Dragon says to Ellison, mentioning Rurin. Ellison asks Rurin if there's anything uncomfortable, to which she replies no, stating she's living very comfortably. Ellison then asks the Black Dragon if he came because of Rurin. As far as Ellison knows, there is no one who can stand against him taking care of Rurin. Ellison adds that he got burned big time trying in the past. After hearing this, the Black Dragon gets really angry, saying he can see that Ellison's mouth is still as foul as ever. However, he agrees that Ellison is right, and he came because of Rurin. After seeing Rurin's face, it's evident she is really sad. She says she will stay with Ellison and asks the Black Dragon why he is doing this all of a sudden. Ellison points out that he abandoned Rurin once, but the Black Dragon insists he never abandoned her. He was just running late due to the war with humans. He also mentions that Rurin's mother committed a serious crime against the dragon family. Before he can complete his sentence, Ellison stops him, saying he should stop talking about that. Ellison asks, "The important thing is the promise between you and me." He heard that a promise is crucial for dragons, and the Black Dragon confirms, stating they definitely promised to leave Rurin with Ellison. However, he raises the order of promises and questions if the first promise made shouldn't be kept first. Ellison inquires about the specific promise, and the Black Dragon explains that a black dragon is accepted as an adult in the family at 800 years old. Until then, they are protected and sent to the family's sacred land. Rurin, turning 800 next year, would have to leave for the sacred place since her mother's lair was destroyed in the last war. These are the family's rules, and violating them could lead to war. Ellison agrees, saying, "Let's do it," referring to the mentioned promise. However, upon hearing Ellison's answer, the Black Dragon gets upset, releasing his intense killing aura. Ellison, seeing this, remarks that he was worried for nothing. Ellison questions why they shouldn't be able to do it, but Rurin is visibly scared. Seeing Ellison like that, Black Dragon gets really angry and says Ellison might have eaten the Lord's heart. But he is looking down on dragons too much. Rurin is really scared. She asks Ellison if she is fine, emphasizing that he can't start a war because of him. However, they misunderstand Ellison, as he is not talking about war. Instead, he is saying that he plans to make a dragon lair for Rurin. After hearing this, Rurin and Black Dragon get really surprised. Ellison explains that they have a whole year, right? They just have to complete it within that time. Ellison believes he should have enough treasures, so they can start now. He asks Black Dragon if he can do that, and Black Dragon replies that it's possible. So, he'll come back in a year. That's how Ellison started to make a dragon lair for Rurin, a lair that is literally a cave a dragon lives in, with a magnificent interior and dazzling treasures as its symbols. Ellison, however, realizes that creating one consumes a lot of time and resources, and he thinks they won't have enough time, especially with guests flooding in due to the rumor that they're selling Palin Q. Despite Ellison explaining that they're not selling it anymore, the demand persists. Because of this, they're getting too many guests, and Ellison and Rurin can't handle them alone. So, Ellison thought he needs a way to decrease the number of guests. Sometime later, we see Mr. Knoll, who is really surprised after seeing so many Palin Q. He asks, "What in the world is this?" Ellison replies that these are Palin Q. Mr. Knoll says he knows that, but why Palin Q? Ellison explains that he'll supply Mr. Knoll with Palin Q, and Mr. Knoll is the only one in the Empire who can sell Palin Q meat and draw in lots of customers. However, Mr. Knoll is confused and asks Ellison how he will catch Palin Q, stating that even Great City's top hunter would find it too challenging to catch one Palin Q. Ellison reassures him, saying he doesn't have to worry because Mr. Ment's mercenary group already had it once. They will split profit distributions by 50-50, and Ellison will deliver for free, taking half of the sales price. Mr. Knoll is not happy with this arrangement, questioning why Ellison is keeping only half when he is the one catching them and providing them to the shop. Ellison stops the old man and explains that half is entirely fair, as he won't be able to supply it in bulk, so Mr. Knoll won't make much anyway. Instead, he suggests using that as bait to sell more of the other meats and buy Miss Rain another set of clothes. Mr. Knoll, with an angry face, agrees to sell it for Ellison but warns him not to change his mind if he gets more profit later. Ellison promises him that he will not do that. After that, Mr. Knoll asks if he heard correctly that they change their habitats periodically. How will he go to catch them? Suddenly, Ellison used his magic skill to create a barrier around the forest. Mr. Knoll is really surprised after Ellison creates a barrier of this size because, in his knowledge, this is not something one can do after learning magic for just a few years. He asks Ellison who he really is. Ellison replies that he is just an ordinary restaurant owner who retired after the war, just like Mr. Knoll. He asks him to please keep it a secret that he uses magic. That's how the next day his plan was executed perfectly. Ellison gets really happy after seeing there is not a single guest. On the other side, Rurin asks if this is really something to be happy about. After hearing this, Ellison starts crying, thinking there would still be some guests. But he suddenly says, at least now they have time to build the lair. Rurin gets really happy hearing about the lair. She asks Ellison if he will live with her once they build the lair. Ellison, without hesitation, says no to Rurin because he intends to continue staying in his restaurant. Hearing Ellison's answer, Rurin says she doesn't need it and suggests declaring war with the Black Dragon family. Ellison asks Rurin to calm down. They're going to build it somewhere near the restaurant and tell Rurin not to worry, asking her to follow. They get to the hill directly below the restaurant. Ellison says he will build the lair in this place since the restaurant itself is on the outskirts of the city, and all of the land nearby belongs to Ellison. Rurin is really happy, saying this much distance is okay for her. However, they have to keep stabilizing the inside with a barrier as they continue to dig, otherwise, the restaurant will collapse. Hearing this, Rurin gets energetic and asks Ellison to start digging together, but Ellison tells her she can work alone, and he will go back to the restaurant because he can't leave it vacant for too long. After coming back to the restaurant, Ellison lays his head on the table and reflects on how long it has been since he was so free. Suddenly, a guest comes to the restaurant and interrupts Ellison's free time. The guest asks if this is the famous restaurant, and Ellison welcomes him, stating that he doesn't know if it's famous but it's certainly a restaurant. The yellow-haired boy mentions that he heard he can eat the legendary Palin Q in this restaurant. Ellison apologizes, saying they don't sell Palin Q anymore, and suggests visiting Noel's butcher shop for Palin Q meat. The yellow-haired boy says he can't do that and asks if there's any other dish. He wants to eat something, anything right now. Ellison responds that if he's fine with a different menu, then please sit down and wait for a moment. And he goes to the kitchen to prepare a dish. While preparing the dish, he thinks the boy seems like the son of a noble with difficult circumstances. Ellison doesn't discriminate against their guests, whether noble or commoner, but he realizes the only dish he's made to fit a child's taste is a hamburger, as Rurin occasionally asks him to prepare it. So, he starts preparing it. For the patty, he'll use a Woka's sirloin, mince and shape it, add a bit of salt, and fry it with the bread and melted butter. He puts the patty on top of the vegetables and tops it with a demi-glace sauce with garlic. Finally, he adds the egg he got while catching the palanqueous. After completing the dish, he thinks that he won't be selling palanqueous anymore, but it's a different story for the eggs. With that, the hamburger, even a dragon can be bribed with, is done. Ellison gives this to the yellow-haired boy, and after seeing the really beautiful sandwich, the boy is really impressed. However, when he tries to eat it, suddenly an old man shouts loudly and says, "Young master." He has been searching for him everywhere and asks what he's doing in a place like this. He adds that what if he gets food poisoning from eating food from a place like this and asks him to follow him out. After hearing this, Ellison gets really upset, saying he was holding back, but the old man's words are too much. The old man notices Ellison and asks if he is the owner of the restaurant. He says he doesn't know if Ellison prepared the meal knowing who this person is, but he is the Lord's son, Grake City's Baron. His name is De'Aaron Grake. Ellison says he doesn't care if he's a baron or count, he just served food to a customer, and asks the old man if that's a problem. The old man gets really angry, saying, "What did Ellison say?" He also adds that Ellison is an arrogant guy. The yellow-haired boy tries to stop them, giving Ellison one gold cone and saying he doesn't know if the amount is right. But he made Ellison prepare it and didn't get to eat it. So he apologizes and starts going with the old man. After giving Ellison money, this makes Ellison worry even more. Sometime later, Rurin comes to the restaurant and asks Ellison when it's his turn to dig the lair. She's exhausted and can't do it anymore. Her hands hurt. Ellison says he'll dig tomorrow. He has more important work to do. He asks Rurin to let's go somewhere and starts casting his teleport magic. Rurin asks where they are going all of a sudden, mentioning she's hungry after working alone. Ellison tells Rurin he'll make something for her once they return, emphasizing that it's really important to him because he received the money, so he has to do it. However, they have to go to the Lord's castle. Sometime later, when the yellow-haired boy is sitting in his room, suddenly a blue portal opens in front of him. Ellison and Rurin come from the portal and grant the yellow-haired boy power. The boy gets really surprised seeing Ellison, so he asks what they want. Ellison replies that they came here to deliver the food. He forgot something earlier. Ellison gives the hamburger to the yellow-haired boy, saying he warmed it up again so he can eat it now. The yellow-haired boy is really curious about many things about Ellison. But first, he'll eat the hamburger. Suddenly, an old man's voice comes out from behind the door, asking the yellow-haired boy if he heard noises from inside and if everything is all right. After hearing this, Ellison gets really disappointed and thinks, seriously, let the boy have his hamburger, you bastards. The yellow-haired boy gets really scared after hearing his butler's voice. He asks Ellison what he should do now. Ellison replies, what do you mean? Tell him it was nothing. You are the Lord's heir and a baron. They cannot refuse your order, so be confident. However, the yellow-haired boy says they've never listened to him before. Instead, they always ignored him. The butler is knocking on the door and says, young master, if you don't open the door, I'll open the door and come in. Rurin is listening to everything and thinking about how frustrating it is. She changes her voice to match the yellow-haired boy's and tells the butler it was nothing, so leave. She never ordered him to come in. The yellow-haired boy is really surprised hearing the same voice as his, but still, he thought they won't listen to his order. The butler stops knocking and says, I understand, sir. Please call me if something happens. The yellow-haired boy is really surprised after seeing this. Ellison says, see, I told you. You have to establish your superiority yourself. But in the next moment, the yellow-haired boy starts calling Ellison teacher and asks him to become his teacher. The yellow-haired boy starts thinking that his mother passed away giving birth to him. His father remarried shortly after, so he spent most of his time with his stepmother. She told him he can't do this, he can't do that. His stepmother was a strict person. She told him to be careful of how he acts since he was the Lord's son. Despite all of that, he still loved her since there were good times as well. However, everything changed when his father became bedridden due to an illness. She never looked at him or talked to him directly at dinners or celebrations. He wanted to become a good lord, just like his father, but the servants tried to control and restrict his movements under his stepmother's orders. He is really sad because there was no one to talk to, everyone was ignoring him. Since it was like this, he felt that he wouldn't be treated any better even if he inherited the title of a lord. But he says with a happy face and bright eyes that his thoughts changed after today's events, and he asks Ellison to please teach him more ways to become a good lord. Ellison, who is really confused, says that the conclusion's a bit weird, though. How does this lead to that? I'm just a restaurant owner. The yellow-haired boy replies, but this has never happened before. He would have still entered if he had told him to leave. Ellison thinks he's lacking a lot of confidence. It seems like he purposely suppressed his energetic and active personality. So he says to the yellow-haired boy, look into the other's eyes when talking to them. You said that you wanted to become a good lord. The lord's position comes with taking responsibility. Hence, you should be able to take responsibility for every word you say. Ellison also says that he is not saying you should ignore other people's words. Make sure you listen and think about the words before making a decision you truly believe in. If the decision is in your favor, then all is well. If not, then accept it and take responsibility. In Ellison's opinion, that's what makes a good lord. After saying this, Ellison opens the teleport door and says to the yellow-haired boy to eat the food before it gets cold and come visit the restaurant sometime. After saying this, he went to the gate. The yellow-haired boy says after Ellison left, he feels like he is dreaming, and without any other thought, he eats the hamburger. He gets really surprised. It's his first time eating something really delicious. Suddenly, he gets surprised and says, I see. A good lord means someone who makes an effort to ensure that everyone can enjoy this kind of food. I understand, master. I understand the actual meaning. On the other side, Ellison and Rurin come back to the restaurant. Ellison says to Rurin that he hopes she doesn't take his words too seriously. Rurin asks if he means the yellow-haired boy, but she is really curious why did Ellison put so much effort into it. You seem to care a lot. Ellison replies that he is doing as much as he is getting and gives Rurin a gold coin. After seeing this, Rurin says this is 100,000 runes. A regular hamburger sells for 200 runes and asks if he really gave this to Ellison in exchange for a hamburger. Ellison replies, that's right. That's why we provided him with a service appropriate for the price. It's not a rip-off restaurant. This guy has hands as big as a dragon. He hopes he becomes a regular later on. Rurin is really angry, saying she doesn't like it because she has fewer hamburgers to eat. On the outskirts of Great City, there is a forest with an oddly popular clinic. The doctor there is definitely skilled and even learned healing magic, but that isn't the reason for its popularity. The biggest reason why customers flock to this place far from downtown is because this clinic is run by an elf, not a human. His name is Elina. She is healing the landlady after she made a little mistake while cooking. The doctor is really glad she arrived quickly. If left untreated, scars may have formed. The landlady gets amazed by his skills and says Elina's skills are the best. But after seeing Elina, the landlady asks her, you don't look so good. What's the matter? Elina replies that she is thinking about whether she should go back to her hometown now. The landlady gets really surprised and asks for the reason. So Elina explains that she loved healing and helping people. Despite everyone's opposition, she came out of town, but the reality was different from what she had imagined. No one is interested in treatment, and the people want to meet the elf woman at all costs, rather than her as a doctor. Not long ago, a person came to him and was furious, saying that she had seduced her husband. She knows that not all humans are like that, and it's not that she doesn't like healing people, but it's getting difficult to hold it in and keep going for him. After hearing this, the landlady is really sad. She asks Elina, by any chance, do you not like me too? Elina replies, no. And I like you, Mrs. Rain. Rather, you always treated me well. That's why I put up with this without prejudice. So the landlady thought if there were more things that Elina liked here, would she still stay? She also explains there are so many things she doesn't like about her husband either. His snoring. He is so naive. but there is something she likes more. She loves the fact that he is dependable, looks out only for himself, and does his best in everything he does. She asks Elina, "You said that it still feels good to treat people, right?" Elina replies, "Yes." The landlady is really happy and says if so, there is a restaurant on the side of the hill, so try eating there tonight. After hearing about the restaurant, Elina is really curious. The landlady replies that the number of reasons for liking this place can keep increasing one by one, and Elle's restaurant can be that kind of place. On the other side, Ellison is digging a cave for Rurin. Mr. Knoll asks Ellison what he is doing here as he was going to the restaurant. Ellison replies that he was about to go too, it was under construction for a while. He asks about the person standing behind Mr. Knoll. Mr. Knoll introduces him as Nellen, and he is Mr. Knoll's nephew. He said that he had something to discuss, so Mr. Knoll wanted to listen while eating some wuba meat. He asks if there is no one at the restaurant right now. Ellison replies no and says Rurin should be there. He asks Mr. Knoll what's the matter. Mr. Knoll says that there is a clinic run by an elf, and Rain recommended the restaurant to the doctor there. He thinks they should be there by now. Ellison says, "Ah, is that so? He'll have to head back then." He asks Mr. Knoll, "Let's go." Ellison asks, "Usually, elves don't come out of their home forest at all. They must be popular, right?" Mr. Knoll says to Ellison, "Don't even ask." He heard that all the guys in the neighborhood run there, even for a thorn pricking their finger. He also adds that seeing things like this makes him understand why elves hate humans. Ellison replies that there are elves who aren't like that and asks Mr. Knoll not to be prejudiced. But he admits that elves are a proud race. Before he says something more, he shows Elina, the elf, knocking down in front of Rurin, saying to Rurin, "You are a great being. Please forgive my rudeness." Rurin says with an angry face, "So you know you are rude. I'll forgive you if you live the rest of your life as my subordinate." Ellison is really angry at Rurin. After seeing Ellison, Rurin says she got herself an elf subordinate that she can use. But Ellison is really angry. He says to Rurin, "What the hell are you doing to our customer?" Before this accident happened, Rurin is sleeping at the table. Suddenly, she hears a voice, "Hello, is somebody there?" She thought a guest had come. It's the elf girl Elina. She asks Rurin if this is the restaurant run by Mr. L. Rurin says yes and mentions that Mr. L is not here now. More importantly, Rurin comments on Elina being an elf. Elina replies affirmatively, stating that she is indeed an elf. After seeing her, Rurin replies, "So it was true that elves are pretty." Elina compliments Rurin, saying she looks very pretty too, and she seems much younger than her. Rurin smiles and says, "Younger? Are you saying that I'm young?" Rurin clarifies that she is young for her own species but should still be older than him. Elina doesn't understand and asks, "What do you mean?" Before Elina can ask anything else, Rurin releases his power, saying, "How dare you run your mouth in front of me like that?" Elina, after witnessing Rurin's power, kneels down in front of him and asks for forgiveness. This is the same exact movement when Ellison came to the restaurant with Mr. Knoll and his nephew. After some time later, when everything's settled, Ellison opens the door and asks for forgiveness for all the commotion, inviting them to come in. After being hit by Ellison, Rurin is crying. But Elina can't believe her eyes and thinks, "Am I dreaming right now?" She is definitely a dragon. Elina explains that it's common knowledge that everyone, from children to elders, knows about never annoy a dragon. They are walking natural disasters who can burn down whole villages if they feel like it. They are the strongest species, the pinnacle of all living beings. Elina grew up hearing legends about dragons to the point where she got tired of them. However, after seeing Ellison treating a dragon like a child, she wonders, just who is that guy? After giving Rurin a lesson, Ellison comes to Elina and asks for an apology on Rurin's behalf for what happened earlier. He didn't know something like this would happen while he was gone. But Elina asks Ellison if he is really a human. Ellison doesn't understand what she means, so he replies yes and says he is human. Ellison thought he somewhat expected it, but Rurin didn't even try to hide her dragon's aura. He also explains that the girl is a dragon, as Elina already knows. He knows it seems weird that he is staying with a dragon, but it's complicated to explain. So he asks Elina if she can keep it a secret from other people. Elina replies, "Oh, of course." She has no intentions of disturbing a dragon's activities. She doesn't want to die yet. Ellison explains to Elina that she won't kill him. But Ellison knows that Rurin left a really bad first impression on Elina, so Ellison changes the topic and asks, "Now that I think about it, are you the elf doctor Mrs. Rain recommended to come?" Elina replies yes and introduces herself as Elina. Ellison thought she is the village doctor. If she tells about this incident, then his restaurant's reputation will be gone. They really messed up the first impression. Elina asks Ellison that she heard one can taste delicious foods here even if they're only made out of vegetables. Ellison replies, sure, that's possible, and asks how much she can tolerate. She replies, it's not because of ethical reasons. My body just can't digest meat, so anything is fine as long as I don't eat meat. Ellison thinks that anything except meat is okay and says okay. He asks her to wait for a moment, stating, I'll prepare something for you. He is thinking there are a lot of good dishes without meat, but he thinks the tomato pasta is one of the best. So he starts making tomato pasta, first adding chopped onion, garlic, and mushrooms to the frying pan with heated olive oil, and cooks. This way, the different flavors harmonize to create a savory smell. Next, he strains the cut tomatoes through a sieve and adds them to the pan. Season with salt, sugar, and other spices, and lower the heat while making sure the sauce doesn't get burned. While the sauce is losing moisture, cook the pasta by boiling it for 8 minutes. Make sure to leave some of the pasta water. Finally, mix the pasta with the sauce and adjust the viscosity of the sauce with the pasta water. The tomato pasta is complete. Ellison serves the tomato pasta to elf girl Elina. She is surprised seeing Ellison's dish. Ellison explains, please eat this using a fork. I didn't use meat at all, so you don't have to worry. Elina is surprised after seeing the pretty color of the dish and starts eating. While she's eating, Ellison starts serving Mr. Knoll, saying, Mr. Knoll, you've waited for a while now, right? Mr. Knoll replies, yeah, I nearly fell asleep while waiting. He tells his nephew, try this quickly, Nellen. I'm telling you, it tastes amazing. Ellison thinks that Mr. Knoll's nephew doesn't look that happy. Maybe he doesn't like the dish. So he thought, then what about Miss Elina? But when he turns his head to Miss Elina, he gets really surprised. She is eating his food like she can't get enough, and she's only been eating raw vegetables until now. She never knew there was something so delicious. After finishing, she says loudly, this is the best food I've ever eaten in my life. But she suddenly realizes that Ellison is also standing there. Ellison says to her, it seems like the pasta suited your taste. She apologizes to Ellison for her behavior and says that the dish was so good that she forgot about manners. Ellison gives her a handkerchief and says, don't worry about it. It's good to hear you liked it. He asks if she doesn't go to other restaurants frequently, and she replies, yeah. I attract too much attention in the city, so I tend to eat vegetables that I buy at small markets. It's not like I never thought about eating a proper meal at a restaurant, but there aren't many menus that have vegetarian options on them. And even if there were, the dishes wouldn't taste that different from raw vegetables. So I thought, is there a need for cooking? Ellison thinks, well, it's true, because the people here don't use that many spices. Since they are rare and expensive, Elina says with a really big smile that she changed her mind after she came here. The food was really delicious. She has to thank Mrs. Rain for recommending this place to her. Ellison gets relieved after hearing this. He doesn't have to worry anymore about his restaurant's reputation. But suddenly, he hears a loud voice coming from Mr. Knoll's table. He asks his nephew, what did you just say? He replies that he just found out that his mother is not his real mother. On the other side, in front of the mining cave, an old woman comes to find her son Nellen. She is the mother of Mr. Knoll's nephew. She asks one of the miners if he has seen Nellen. He replies that he hasn't seen him. The night shift team already went into the mine. The old lady gets really sad, thinking her son ate something before he went to work. She asks the worker if she can bring this to him and come back out. The worker gives her permission to go into the mine. The old lady goes into the mine to give her son some food. In another side, Ellison's restaurant, Mr. Knoll asks his nephew just whom did he hear that from. But he says that's not the important thing now. He was fooled for 20 years, so he can't concentrate on work. That's why he left the mine early. He can't go back home like this. Ellison and Elina also listen to their conversation. Mr. Knoll says, don't you know what Mrs. May went through to raise you? She worked day and night because she wanted to feed you well, even though your father passed away early while working as a mercenary. Don't you think it's amazing that she did so much despite you not being her child by birth? You are smart enough to understand that on your own. He starts crying and says he knows that, too, and he knows that it's all his fault. But he was so irritated and angry that this morning when his mother asked him not to forget to take her lunch, he replied, I don't need it, woman, and suddenly Mr. Knoll gets really angry and grabs him. He says, there are things you say and things you never say, you bastard. Ellison stands up on his table and says, oh no, I'll have to stop this from escalating. But before he says something, the landlady comes and asks Nellen something big happened. Hurry and go to the mine. The mine collapsed onto his mother. She's trapped inside now. After hearing this, he gets really shocked and asks the landlady, what? What did you just say? Mr. Knoll asked his wife Rena, what do you mean the mine collapsed? And what happened to Mrs. May? She replied that she didn't know for sure, but apparently Mrs. May went inside to find Nellin and then, his words, Nellin stood up from his seat and started running out of the restaurant. The landlady and Mr. Knoll also said, "We've got to go to the mine as well." But when they started heading to the mine, Elina asked them if she could also come with them, explaining that if the mine collapsed, then surely there would be injured people. She will help them with her healing magic. Ellison also said he would go too. But the landlady asked Elina if she was okay with this because Elina is an elf, and people see him differently. Elina said she knew not all people are like that, but it's getting difficult for her to endure it. The landlady said, all right, she understands. She will take Elina to the mine. In another side, in front of the mine, people are badly injured, and many people are also trapped in the mine. Nellin comes to the mine and asks them to let him go in. But a man grabs Nellin and asks him to calm down, saying it's dangerous. It could collapse again. Ellison and Elina also come to the mine. Ellison says to Nellin, please calm down. We'll head inside and save Mr. Nellin's mother. One of the men who stopped Nellin from going into the mine comes forward and says to Ellison, hey, listen. You can't go in either. We can't predict when it'll collapse again. It's an emergency situation. Ellison explains that the lady standing at my side, she is a doctor who has been taught healing magic. There are probably a lot of people inside who can't move and need to be treated right away. Every minute counts. Ellison asks them to let them go to the mine, but the old man is really frustrated. He doesn't have any choice, so he gives them permission to go. Elina thanks Ellison for helping him out, but Ellison says he didn't have to follow him in. It's too dangerous. Some time later, they reach the first floor of the mine, but suddenly some stones start falling from the ceiling. Luckily, Ellison saves Elina with his magic shield and says to Elina, as you can see, I know my way around magic. I'll stop any falling rocks for you. Elina gets really surprised and says, so you are a mage. Ellison explains that he was quite successful when he was younger. However, he is retired now. But he is more curious about why Elina decided to come here. He heard Elina owns a clinic in Great City. He also adds that he is telling him this because one of his comrades used to be an elf, too. He also says that he doesn't think she's running that clinic just because she's an elf, and there were probably times when humans behaved rudely to him. Yet, she decided to enter a collapsing mine to save people. Is there any special reason for him to do so? But Elina doesn't reply. She doesn't have any words to say because she knows everything Ellison says is right. Before she says something, Ellison notices the road is forked, and they don't have enough time to search both of them. So Ellison uses his spirit's magic to track the people. Elina is really surprised. She asks Ellison if he can even control spirits. Ellison replies, yes, and says they'll tell us if there are any survivors. After a moment, one of the spirits finds one of the survivors. An old man is injured. After seeing a glowing light, he asks, what is this? Thinking that he must be nearing his end, he starts hallucinating. But the next moment, Ellison and Elina come to help him. Elina asks him if he is all right. Can you move? The old man is really surprised. He asks Ellison and Elina if they are the rescue team, explaining that he hurt his leg when the mine collapsed. After hearing this, Elina starts using his healing magic. Fortunately, it's not a serious injury, and says to him, you can head out after a first aid treatment. The old man thanks Elina for helping him. In another side, Ellison notices that his sprite, they found someone over there, too. Elina and Ellison saved many people using Elina's healing magic, and Ellison sent them out of the mine using his magic. Sometime later, they reached the last floor. However, Elina was getting tired after using his magic continuously. Ellison asked her if she could keep going, and she replied, yes. Ellison thought if Mr. Nellin's mother isn't here. But before he could say something more, he noticed an old lady lying on the ground. This old lady is Mr. Nellin's mother. Ellison asked Elina, how is she? Elina replied that she's in a bad state. I'll use a stronger recovery spell on her, but I can't guarantee its results. So she started using his strongest healing magic. Outside the mine door, people stabilized a temporary evacuation shelter so they could treat injured people. The landlady asked Mr. Knoll, what do we do? Mr. Knoll explained that Ms. Elina said the spell worked, so don't worry too much. She just has to wake up. Luckily, Elina saved the old lady's life. Mr. Nellin was crying after seeing his mother's condition, but Ellison explained there is no need to worry. Ms. Elina treated her quickly, using a stronger spell, so she's past a critical state. Elina, who was looking really weak, explained that she received a heavy blow to her head, but the treatment was a success. The injury near her eye isn't serious, so she will be able to live normally once the bandages are removed. Suddenly, Mr. Nellin saw the food basket that his mother prepared in the morning. He thought about his mother asking him not to forget to take her lunch, but he said he didn't need it, thinking that this is his fault because of him. His mother came to the mine and got hurt. Suddenly, his mother woke up and asked if he is Nellin. Hearing Mrs. May's voice, everyone got really happy. Mr. Nellin started crying after hearing his mother's voice. He said, "I'm here. Mom, your son is here." His mother asked him if he didn't get hurt. He replied, "Of course not, I'm fine. I was so scared. What if the words I spoke to you this morning had become my last words to you?" After hearing his son's words, his mother also started crying. She said, "You're calling me mom again. I'm sorry I worried you. It's still a relief, though. It's a relief that you are not inside the mine." After seeing this, Miss Elina was really surprised. She said to Ellison, "It's just as you said. Actually, I wanted to close the clinic and return to my hometown. I was disappointed in humans after experiencing a lot of terrible things here. That's when Mrs. Rain told me this. Try increasing the number of things you enjoy here." Perhaps I hurried over to find those things. The lives of humans are much shorter compared to an elf's, but they express their emotions freely. That's why people get easily disappointed and heartbroken. She was one of them. But, ironically, that's also the reason she set up the clinic. She thinks there are too many things she cherishes here that she can't just leave. She likes the honest emotions of humans. And now she also knows how delicious the food is here. Today, she realized many things. Suddenly, she got exhausted, but luckily, Ellison caught her before she fell to the ground. She asked for forgiveness to Ellison. Ellison said to her, "It seems like you exhausted yourself," and asked her to excuse him for a second. He transferred some of his mana to her. Elina was really surprised after seeing this. She questioned if this is the elf's mana transfer spell and asked where he learned this. Ellison explained that his elf friend he mentioned earlier taught him this spell. His name is Beden. Elina got really shocked after hearing Beden's name. She explained that Beden is the hero of the elves and asked Ellison how he knows him. Ellison replied that, "I already told you earlier. I used to be a famous mage." Meanwhile, on the hill beneath the restaurant, Rurin was complaining about Ellison and saying, "That scoundrel, he always leaves me out. How can he tell me to go and dig just because I can't use magic in front of other people? That's not fair." She was just trying to get a subordinate to help with the restaurant. But accidentally, she found out a natural hot spring.